At 600 a.m. sharp, there she was, the queen of the HOA herself, standing on my porch like she owned the mountain. Sheriff's deputies in tow, clutching a demolition order like it was the lost Ark of the Covenant. I'm talking about Delilah Cromwell, manicured finger jabbing at legal papers, hair sculpted into that unmistakable Karen helmet attitude so thick it could block a snowplow. "Your cabin's coming down, Mr. Blackwood," she declared, radio static crackling from the patrol cars, her perfume doing battle with the pine resin and wood smoke from my chimney. She'd made it her mission to terrorize the whole neighborhood, but she really thought she could bulldoze a widower off land his family had owned since before the county had paved roads. What she didn't know, and what would wind up wrecking her entire reputation across 3 counties, was that my land wasn't just any patch of dirt. No, ma'am. This little slice of heaven sat smack on federal forest land. Now, you ever had one of those mornings where your coffee's hot, your dog's at your feet, and the only thing ruining your view is some suburban dictator with a vendetta? Yeah, that happened. I took a slow sip, tried not to laugh, then pulled out my own folder of documents stamped, signed, and sealed by the United States government. "Before you embarrass yourself any further, Delilah, you might want to check who really owns this land." Her smile disappeared faster than a cold beer in July. "Let me back up a sec. My name's Jake Blackwood. 3 years ago, I lost my wife, Sarah, to cancer. Hardest thing I ever went through. We'd always dreamed of building a cabin up in the Colorado mountains, near where her granddad took us hiking when we were young and foolish enough to think the world was fair. After the funeral, I couldn't breathe in our old house without seeing her everywhere, so I made the only move that made sense. I packed up, took the 2 acres I inherited from my own granddad, and started over at 8,500 feet. Just me, my old truck, and my dog Ranger. You want to talk about peace and quiet? Out there you can hear yourself think. Unless, of course, the local HOA decides you're a threat to property values. I did everything by the book: permits, surveys, environmental studies, you name it. Built that place with my own 2 hands, using the work to survive the grief one board at a time. Nothing fancy, just 200 square feet with a metal roof, solar panels, and a composting toilet. The kind of setup that'd make an environmental engineer cry tears of joy. Ranger and I chopped wood, read books, healed as best we could. Then Delilah Cromwell rolled into town. White Escalade realtor plates, boots, cleaner than the day they came out of the box, the kind of woman who checks her reflection in the rear view before getting out just to make sure the neighbors know she's better than them. She waltzed onto the HOA board inside a month, started enforcing community standards like she was the sheriff and the mayor rolled into one. Measured grass with a ruler, snapped pictures of trash cans, dressed like she was headed to a Denver gala instead of navigating our rutted dirt roads. For some reason, my little cabin got under her skin. She'd drive up unannounced, clipboard in hand, snapping photos of my solar panels like I was running an illegal power plant. "Mr. Blackwood, your structure violates multiple HOA architectural standards," she'd say. I told her, "Ma'am, my family's owned this land since '87 and I never signed any HOA paperwork." She laughed a sound so grating it'd peel paint and explained that all properties are grandfathered in. Oh, and the fee for review $500 up front, plus whatever it took to come into compliance. That's about when I realized she'd been running her mouth around town, painting me as the resident troublemaker. Neighbors who used to wave suddenly found their driveways fascinating whenever I drove by. I sat at my kitchen table that night, old property deeds spread under the lamp, tracing the borders against her HOA maps. My granddad's iron survey markers were still there, right where they'd been pounded into the earth decades ago. But according to Delilah's map, I was 50 feet over some imaginary line. Next morning, I called the county recorder, good old Bob, who'd been there forever. "Son, your property's been a headache on their maps for years, but the original markers are the law." That seed of doubt, it was about to grow into Delilah's worst nightmare. 2 weeks later, here comes a certified letter thick as a phone book demanding a $500 review fee, $50 daily fines, color photos of every so-called violation. She even photographed my dog's house, for crying out loud. Only she'd made her first real mistake, CC'd the county building department and the sheriff trying to get the government to enforce her power trip. Time for a counterpunch. I drove to the county office, handed Bob every scrap of paperwork. He read her letter and snorted. She's got about as much authority over your place as my cat's got over NASA. Every permit, every inspection stamped approved. No HOA approval needed. That wasn't all. A little online digging showed the HOA's corporate registration had lapsed 6 months ago, not just expired, but flagged in big, bold red. How do you enforce anything when you're not even a real organization? Delilah's response was pure desperation. Threats of emergency enforcement, noise, complaints about my generator. The deputy who showed up, Martinez. Poor guy looked about as comfortable as a vegan at a barbecue. Sir, I have to respond, but honestly, this is a civil matter. That's when I showed him the inactive HOA status and watched his eyes get big as dinner plates. Turns out the deputy was starting to get real tired of her games too. Mini twist here. I called Roy Patterson, my neighbor, Vietnam vet, salt of the earth. Jake, she tried to find my wife for bird feeders, said they attracted undesirable wildlife. That's when the picture came together. Delilah was bullying anyone who didn't fit her Stepford suburbia. So I started documenting everything: military-style dates, times, witnesses, even dog walking schedules. She was digging her own hole and didn't know it. The next morning, she tried to file a lien on my property, zero legal authority, but now she was leaving a federal paper trail. Instead of backing down, she doubled down, called a community safety meeting about my dangerous structure, even tricked a county inspector into attending. I showed up with a folder of documentation, every page bulletproof. When the inspector saw my paperwork, he just shook his head. Sir, this cabin's a model for how to build off-grid. Most suburban houses aren't this safe. But here's where it got really juicy. All of Delilah's HOA paperwork listed her own real estate office as the official address. Conflict of interest. Anyone? Turns out every time she harassed a resident, her company ended up selling the property. Nice little side hustle. I laid out the pattern for the whole community. Families pushed out sales, closed, commissions pocketed. Suddenly, the room was split, old-timers sharing their stories, Delilah's new recruits squirming. She tried to announce a special $3,000 assessment on the spot. I refused, citing the lapsed registration. Next day, another fraudulent lien. Just before Christmas, a process server looked like he'd rather be anywhere else showed up with an emergency demolition notice. 2 sheriff's cars idled in the cold exhaust, puffing into the mountain air. Ma'am says you gotta tear down your cabin by Christmas Eve, he mumbled. I looked the deputies in the eye, hit record on my phone. You realize you can't enforce private HOA demands, right? Only a court order signed by a judge. They got real quiet, real fast. Then Delilah, seeing her drama falling apart, tried to use my wife's death as a weapon, called me unstable. The temperature dropped 10 more degrees, I swear. Even the deputies looked disgusted. That's when I played my ace, been doing some research, Delilah. You might want to check those old federal survey markers. Her face tightened. What kind of markers? The kind that say this property belongs to the United States Forest Service. You could see the fear creeping in. Even the deputies started to look nervous. Christmas morning, while Delilah was probably scheming over her eggnog, I hiked up the ridge in snowshoes, ranger bounding ahead, found those original iron posts stamped with Forest Service numbers and GPS coordinates, pulled up the federal database on my phone, cross-checked, and what do you know? My entire plot, every nail and rafter, sat on federal land. Some bureaucrat had screwed up the subdivision lines back in 1987. Granddad paid taxes on land the government still owned, and the county never bothered to ask questions. Federal law trumps all local regulations. Delilah's threats, fines, demolition orders, all hot air, no teeth. I called the Forest Service, got a rep on the phone who could barely keep from laughing. If your land's federal, the HOA has zero authority. Even better, her fraudulent liens and threats now counted as wire fraud, a federal crime with real teeth. The Forest Service agreed to an expedited survey, and they'd be notifying anyone who'd filed false claims too. I called Roy, and the rest of my neighbors looped in a reporter named Katie Martinez, who'd been itching for a real HOA scandal. Turns out County Clerk Bob had his own file on Delilah full of fraudulent filings and illegal claims. He gave me a crash course on fighting HOA bullies. Always check the original survey markers, verify corporate status, and most people never do this, research federal land records. The Forest Service survey confirmed that my cabin sat squarely on federal ground, and every action Delilah had taken for months was now a matter for federal prosecutors. Meanwhile, Delilah tried everything. Fake private security, 2 guys in a rusty Ford who smelled like cigarettes, and regret rumor campaigns about me being a dangerous vet, even spray painting my solar panels and putting up fake road closed signs. But the kicker, she tried to bribe the county inspector, offering him a consulting fee to invent violations. He turned her in on the spot, another felony for her collection. FBI's white-collar crime division opened a file, and the Forest Service dug up a paper trail showing Delilah's HOA had illegally collected fees from half the county. She just kept digging. January 15th, she called an emergency community meeting determined to destroy my reputation once and for all. She didn't know half the county, the feds, and local news would be there too. The room was packed, standing room only, neighbors buzzing. Delilah took the podium running a PowerPoint of my so-called violations voice full of manufactured outrage. That was my moment. I stood up, held up the official Forest Service survey, and announced, "This is federal land. You have no authority here." The room fell silent. The FBI agent and the Forest Service investigator who'd been sitting in the back strode forward and arrested Delilah on the spot. Wire fraud, attempted extortion, filing false claims against government property. Cameras flashed, neighbors cheered, and just like that, Delilah's reign of terror was over. The aftermath was something to see. Her business assets frozen, real estate license gone, federal charges pending, civil lawsuits from every neighbor she'd ever harassed. The community came together. Mrs. Patterson put up more bird feeders than ever. Roy organized a Freedom from HOA Tyranny barbecue. And people from all over Colorado started sharing their stories too. Katie's reporting won awards, sparked legislative change, and led to 3 more corrupt HOA presidents getting the boot. Me, I started a legal fund to help vets and elderly homeowners fight back. And for the first time since Sarah passed, I felt like I'd finally done something good with my pain. Look, HOA bullies like Delilah count on you being scared, isolated, confused. But when you hit them with real law and real community, their power vanishes. Now I spend my days in my hand-built cabin, ranger at my side, teaching neighbors how to stand up for themselves and enjoying mountain sunsets no HOA will ever control. So here's my question for you. Ever tangled with an HOA tyrant? Got a story to share? Drop your HOA nightmare in the comments. You never know who needs to hear. They're not alone. And if you believe in standing up for what's right, hit that subscribe button, smash like, and stay tuned for more stories where the little guy wins. Because at the end of the day, justice on the mountain is a view worth fighting for.